Begin today, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, the second perek of Masechta Kidushin, Daf Mem Aleph, Amud Aleph. So here we go back to the halachas of Masechta Kidushin, talking about a woman getting married. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, Ish Mekadesh Boy Ubeshluchay. A man can be Mekadesh a woman himself, or by sending an agent, sending a shliach to be Mekadesh this woman for him. Ha'isha, same with a woman, Miskadeshes, she can get married to the man, Ba, herself receiving the money or the ring, or ubeshlucha, or by sending a shliach to receive it for her. Ha'ish mekadesh es bitoy, a father could be mekadesh, could marry off his daughter, kishihi naira. Once she's a naira, she's in that stage of naira, meaning from 12 years old until 12 and a half, she's still called a naira, but not when she's a begeres, which is after that age, when she's more mature, 12 and a half and up. And Rashi says, the Mishnah says naira, but really, of course, a father could also marry off his daughter when she's a ketana, before her bas mitzvah. As we'll see in the Gemara says that nevertheless Chazal said that a person should not marry off his daughter at that age. So therefore the Mishnah mentions here naira, because this is the usual thing that a father only marries off his daughter from the age of naira and up. And that also is boy ubishluchay. He can marry off his daughter himself directly or by sending a shliach. So as you see, the main chiddush of this Mishnah is the concept of shlichus. That you could send a shliach to be mekadesh, a woman, or to receive the Kidushin, and that's going to be a big focus in the Gemara soon regarding what's the source of this idea of shlichus. So the Gemara asks a question on the beginning of the Mishnah. Hashte b'shluchay mekadesh. The Mishnah is saying that one can be mekadesh a woman through a shliach. So boy mi boye. Does the Mishnah have to say that he can receive the Kidushin or give the Kidushin that is himself? Why, if the chiddush of this Mishnah is to say b'shluchay, it should just say ish mekadesh b'shluchay. Why does it mention the boy, that he himself could give the Kiddushin directly? Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef answers, mitzvah boy yosef mi b'shluchay. It's a mitzvah to do it yourself more than sending a shliach to do this for you. When a person does a mitzvah and he does it with his own body, he's involved in the mitzvah himself, you get more schar for this. That's what Rashi here says. That's the point. You send a shliach, so you're sitting down and you're doing nothing, and someone else is doing the mitzvah for you. You do the mitzvah yourself, there's more schar. Kiha de Rav Safra, we find that Rav Safra, when it came to prepare for Shabbos, machrich reisha, he himself would singe the head of the animal that he would use. He was eating on Shabbos. He himself would go and prepare this. Rave malach shibuta. Rav himself prepared, he salted the fish that he ate for Shabbos. He didn't leave it for anyone else to do for him. So we see that mitzvah boy, even though he could have asked his wife or someone else that was doing it and prepared for him, but he did it himself. There's a vart of the Alter Rebbe on this, in the Kuntres Achra and the Shulchan Aruch, where the Alter Rebbe says that you find in the Gemara and Shabbos, in other places where there it says that it's actually a chiyuv. It's an obligation for every person to prepare themselves on Shabbos. In our Gemara, it's mashma that it's not a chiyuv. This concept of mitzvah boy, yoser mi b'shluchay, as Rashi says, it's better. You get more schar for this, but it's not necessarily an obligation. So the Alter Rebbe there says that when it comes to preparing for Shabbos, there's two different things. There's a concept called koved Shabbos. You have to honor Shabbos, and that's by preparing for Shabbos, and that's actually an obligation on every person himself. You can't be yetzer by sending someone else. The whole honor of Shabbos is that you yourself are preparing, and that's the Gemara in Shabbos, which gives more examples that every Tana, Amayra, they used to prepare themselves. Then there's another Inyan. What the Gemara is talking about over here is Einik Shabbos. That the fact that there's certain delicacies that a person eats on Shabbos, and he himself is preparing that food for Shabbos, that's not a chiyuv. That's a inyan of Einik Shabbos that you're preparing for it, and that they chose to prepare dafke this inyan to do it themselves because of mitzvah boy yosef mi b'shlucha, and that's what our Gemara is talking about here.
Preparing for Shabbos could be just different activities of setting up the house.
All kinds of things, correct? That's covered Shabbos, but that's not Einik Shabbos. Einik Shabbos is regarding preparing the food for Shabbos, and that's what the Gemara is speaking about here. Ikeda another version to explain why the Mishnah says boy. Baha isura nami isba. Over here, for a person to send a shliach to be mekadesh isha, this is forbidden. Chazal said that he shouldn't do so. Why not? Because Rav Yudah Amar Rav, Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, Asr la'adam sheyekadesh isha ad sheirena. It's not allowed for a person to be mekadesh a woman until he sees her. He knows he sees her himself. Why? Because what happens if he sends a shliach? He never met her, never saw her, never spoke to her. Shemi yireh b'dava meguna. Later he comes and sees who his wife is, and he may see something that he doesn't like about her. And then v'tizgan olav, and she'll be despicable in his eyes. And now she's married to him. V'rachmana ama v'ahavta l'reyacha kamaycha. And the Torah says you have to love your fellow like yourself. And it begins. The first thing is regarding his wife, that now he's married to her and he doesn't like her. He never met her before. So therefore, Chazal said that one should not marry through a shliach. You should do it himself. That's why the Mishnah is saying boi, and then b'shlucha. If you do it through a shliach, the Kidushin takes effect. But nevertheless, Chazal said that you should do it by yourself. Now, v'chi itme de Rav Yosef, when Rav Yosef said his halacha about mitzvah by Yosef b'shlucha, a sefer itme. He was saying that regarding the sefer. Ha'isha miskadeshes ba b'shlucha. So here it says as well that when she receives her kedushin, she can receive the kedushin from the man herself, or she can send a shliach with that. So here the same question is hashta b'shlucha mikacha. If she can send someone else to receive the kedushin for her, ba mibaye. So needless to say that she can get married by receiving it herself. Rav Yosef mitzvah ba Yosef b'shlucha. It's regarding this that Rav Yosef said that there's a mitzvah to do it herself more than sending a shliach. Rav Safra, like the story we just said, Rav Safra, Machrech Reisha, he singed the head to prepare for Shabbos, and Rava Malach Shibute, Rava salted the fish. Aval Baha, over here, regarding the woman, Isura Lespa, from her end, the fact that she is not seeing who the man is that she's going to be marrying, so from her end, there's no Isra involved in this. Kid Reish Lakish, as Reish Lakish said, Amar Reish Lakish, Tav, Lemesav, Tandu, for a woman, it's better for her to sit with two bodies together than to sit alone. So therefore over here, when the Mishnah says the halacha regarding from the woman's perspective, over here there's no Isra involved. Even though Rashi points out the fact that she sent the agent to receive the Kidushin from the husband never ended up seeing her as well. So in such a case as well, from the husband's end, there's going to be the Isra here. But that's not what the Mishnah is talking about over here in this din. Over here we're talking about this from the woman's end. From her perspective, there's no issa for her to get married to a man that she never saw. So over here when the Mishnah adds the word ba, it's coming to teach that to get married is a mitzvah, and mitzvah ba yosem b'shlucha. There's a discussion about this because when it comes to the man, the mitzvah of marriage is which mitzvah? The mitzvah of piriviribia, to have children. We learned a few times in the Gemara, we had it before and over here as well, that the mitzvah of piriviribia lies in the man, not on the woman. So over here it's saying regarding the man, mitzvah ba yosem b'shluchai, because it says mitzvah. But when it comes to the woman, how could you say mitzvah ba yosem b'shlucha if it's not even a mitzvah for her? She's just helping the husband fulfill his mitzvah of piriviribia. But the emes is, the Ran says in a few places that when the woman helps the man fulfill the mitzvah, she has the mitzvah as well. She's fulfilling a mitzvah as well. So this inyan of mitzvah ba yosem b'shlucha applies to her, even though she doesn't have that obligation of piriviribia, but she's participating in the mitzvah. And therefore, right from the beginning, the preparation, the first stage of the mitzvah, which is the marriage, mitzvah ba yosem b'shlucha.
So all this is only if she never saw her. But if you saw her, and then
saying he met her. Otherwise, he went out with her already, and then later on, so then l'chayda there's no iser. Anachanami. The reason today why there's a lashon I think that the Paiskim say in our Gemara it says, and the lashon of the Gemara is achi yerena, you see her, but the lashon that it says in Paiskim is achi yakirena, which is more than she should get to know her. You should realize who the person, the personality, to know if you can get along with her.
Means also, or dafka the sefer? Also the sefer.
Not dafka on the sefer, because in the reisha it's a iser. He said it on the reisha, on the sefer dafka. And in the reisha it's also mitzvah boy, but over there it's a different inyan. Over there it's an iser. So he learned it out from the sefer. So the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah, Ish mekadesh es bita kishi naira. A father marries off his daughter when she's a naira. Says the Gemara, or the Gemara asks, kishi naira in kishi katana loy. Only when she's a naira, but not when she's younger, before bas mitzvah. When she's a katana, you can't marry her off. So this proves what Rav said. Or it said in the name of Rabbi Lazar. Person is not allowed to marry off his daughter when she is a katana. Until she becomes bas mitzvah, she's at the age where she can clearly say herself who she is, who she wants to marry to. A father marrying off his daughter as a katana, you're not allowed. Okay, so here Taisus clarifies, even though the Gemara just said that for a woman she's it's okay to live just with anyone, two bodies, doesn't matter who it is, but that's only if there's her consent in it. If she's a katana and her father is just sending her off to be married to someone, then she's not interested. But that's interesting. Taisus actually does say va'achshav in Taisus' times. The minig was that the father did marry off his daughter when she's a katana, because Taisus says because of the tzaddis of the gullus, and we don't know when you're going to have the time or the ability to marry off your daughter. So the minig in Taisus' times was that a father married off his daughter even when she was a katana. Okay, here the Gemara comes back to the main point of the Mishnah, the chiddush of shlichus, that you could send a shliach to be mekadesh a wife. So the Gemara, shlichus min alon. What's the source of the idea of shlichus? That you don't have to do it yourself. Now, this union of shlichus does not apply to every single thing or to every mitzvah. For example, putting on tefillin or other mitzvahs where you need the body of the person himself. It's a mitzvah that's on his guf that he has to do. There's no concept of shlichus. But there are certain things that you don't have to do it yourself. The effect of it could be done by someone else, by Kidushin, and we'll see another list of things the Gemara will bring. So what's the source of this that you don't have to do it yourself? Tanya we learned in Abraisa. When the Pasuk says the concept of Kidushin, so the Torah says Vishilcha mi beisai. He sent her out of his house. So Rashi says the term that's always used is Kidushin. So it should have said Vigirsha, that he is Megadasher, not Vishilcha. So from this, the fact that the Torah switches this into the word Vishilcha, we learn it as follows. So first we learn Vishilach. It could have written in the Torah Vishilach, he sends, and it didn't have to say Vishilcha, that he sends her. It says right there before in the Pasuk, it is speaking about a Isha. We know that he's sending his wife. Why does it have to say Vishilcha? So first we learn from the word Vishilach. Melamed Shahu is a shliach. That teaches that the husband can make a shliach when he's divorcing his wife. So he can send it, the get, through a shliach. And then Vishilcha, the Torah wrote Vishilcha with the hay. Now Vishilcha is read that the husband is doing this as well. Vishilcha is read, Rashi says Mapekei, when you read Vishilcha. So what does that mean? That he's sending it to her. He's sending her, or he's sending her away. But because this word is not the word that the Torah should have written, it's the word Torah changed from the Girsha to Vishilcha, so we read it as Vishilcha, that she's sending, without the Mapekeh. Melamed shehi is a shliach. She could send a shliach to receive her get. So we know that the husband can send a shliach, and we know that the woman can send a shliach. And then Vishilach, Vishilcha, the Torah writes this twice. This lashon of Vishilcha is written again. Melamed shliach is a shliach. This teaches me that the first shliach could appoint the second shliach as well. You may think that only one shliach, but not more. Well, this teaches me that another shliach, and so on further, you can appoint more shluchim. This is the source when you get to Kidushin.
You said two?
Yeah, it says twice in the Torah. It says the word Vishilcha, it says twice in the Torah. Yeah. Fact the Gemara, so Ashkecham beGedushin. We see this chiddush of shlichus the Torah says regarding divorce. But beKidushin min alon, what's the source that this applies regarding Kidushin as well, like it says in our Mishnah? If you'll say we just compared it to the Yalav meGedushin, we compare Kidushin to Gedushin. But it's not the same thing. Ma'ale Gedushin shekin yeshnun bal karcha. I see regarding Gedushin, a man could divorce his wife even against her will. So if you hear it's more lenient, you have more of a power to divorce her. So maybe that's why here as well you could divorce through a shliach. But by Kidushin, where it has to be with her consent, who says you have the power to do it through a shliach? Makra, so we have a pasuk that compares Kidushin to Gedushin. V'yotza, v'haisa, as we had earlier in the Masechta, Torah says v'yotza, which is the Gedushin, then v'haisa, which is a marriage. Makish havoya liyitzia. We compare marriage to the divorce. Ma yitzia mashvi shliach. Just like by the divorce, you can appoint a shliach. Af avoya nami mashvi shliach. So to regarding Kidushin, regarding the marriage, you could also appoint a shliach. The Gemara brings another case where we see the concept of shlichus. Ve'elo that Nana says in the Mishnah regarding separating truma. A person says to a shliach, go and separate the truma for me. Now, when it comes to truma, in the Torah, it doesn't say the amount of how much you have to separate for truma. So there's three shiurim that Chazal said. A person that's giving more generously, so he gives a 40th. A person that's very stingy, he gives a 60th. And a person that's average in the middle gives a 50th. So when you send the shliach and you didn't tell him how much to give, so taidim kedas balabais. You should give according to what you estimate and know what kind of a person he is, if he's generous or not. If you don't know what his opinion or what his share would be to give, so then taidim bebeinim is you give the average amount, which is echad mechamishim. You give a 50th. Piches asara. What's if he gave less than that? He gave, what Rashi actually says, Piches asara means that he gave a 40th, or Haisif asara, or he gave more, he gave a 60th. So then Truma se Truma. So even though it's not exactly what the Balabas would have given, but he didn't specify to him exactly what to give, so then you give, so that the Truma that is takes effect. Okay, Taista says the Pshat is Fakert. Piches asara means he gave a 60th, and Haisif asara means he gave a 40th. Okay, so Bekitza, the point is, you see over here regarding Truma that you could send a Shliach to separate the Truma for you. So where do we learn this out from? If you'll say that you learn out the concept of shlichus that you find by Gedushin, that the same is regarding the mitzvah of separating truma, you can't compare, because mala Gedushin sheken yeshnan chayil. Gedushin is regarding a mundane matter. It's not in any level of kedusha. Truma is separating something for the kayin. There's a level of kedusha to this, so maybe it's more stringent, it's more specific. You have to do it yourself. You can't compare the two. So Amakra says the Gemara, the Torah says regarding Truma itself, Atem, when it says that you should separate the Truma, the lashon of the pasuk is that Kain Tarimu Gam Atem. So it could have written the word Atem, but instead it says Gam Atem, also you. What's that extra word of Gam? Rabbi says a shliach. This comes to say that you could separate the Truma through a shliach. So we have a source for Gedushin, and we compare Kidushin to Gedushin. Now we have a source for Truma. Now that you have the source for shlichus by Truma, v'nichtav rachmana b'Truma, so let the Torah write the halacha of shlichus by Truma, v'nei sahanach v'nigra minei, and we can learn out Gedushin and Kidushin that the shlichus over there from Truma. Why does it have to write it separately by Gedushin? Answers the Gemara, mishum dikla mifrach, because if you would want to learn out from Truma, I can refute that and say sheken yeshna b'machshava. When it comes to Truma, I find a unique leniency. How Truma takes effect, a person just with his machshava could be thinking that in this side of my field I want this to be Truma, and it becomes Truma. Rashi brings a pasuk, v'nechshav, just by your thought, it becomes Truma. So maybe there, you see it's easier that the Truma should take effect, that's why Shlichus can also take effect. Through a Shliach, it can become Truma. But by Gedushin or Kidushin, you have to do it yourself. Okay, so therefore we need a separate pasuk for Gedushin. You can't learn from Truma. Now the Gemara brings a third place. This way we learned in a Mishnah regarding the carbon Pesach. Chabura Shavad Pischa. There was a group that joined together with a carbon Pesach, and the animal got lost. So they told one of the people of the group, "Tzei ubakesh, go and look for this carbon Pesach that got lost, and if you find it, and then you'll shecht it for us." He went to Motzah, he found this animal that was lost, and he shechted for them. But they weren't sure if they could rely on him, so they went also and bought another animal, and they brought it for a carbon, and they shechted it as well. So what's the halach? If he, the one that went to look for this animal that was lost, if he shechted first, so then they shechted with him, and because he already shechted his first, and they were all counted with him already from before, so they can eat together with him, and he went and did it for them, and shechted it for them, and brought it for them, and they're included in his group. Okay, so what do we see over here? They send one person for the group, and he shechts it for them, and they have the mitzvah, and they join together with him. So we see that there's a concept of shlichus regarding shechting the carbon Pesach. From where do we know the concept of shlichus regarding this carbon? If you'll say the yalef mehanach, let's learn out from Gedushin, Kidushin, from Truma. You can't compare. Ma'ala hanach sheken yeshnon choil eitzel kachim. They're choil, they're mundane, comparing to kachim, even Truma. That's not choil mamish, but comparing to kachim, it's not on the same level of the kedusha of kachim. So maybe by kachim, you have to do it yourself because it's on a higher level. Answers the Gemara, Nafkalei med Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. We learn it out, Rabbi Shua ben Karcha darshan from a pasuk. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, minayin, sheshluch shlavim kamaisei. What's the source of this concept that you send a shliach and what he does is like you did it yourself? Shenema, the pasuk says, by the carbon Pesach, v'shachatu oisei kol kahal adas Yisrael ben arbaim. Yidden shech the carbon Pesach on Yudal Nisan in the afternoon. What does this pasuk mean? V'chikol hakol kulon sheichten. Do all Yidden themselves shech the carbon? It's only one person that's shechting the carbon. You have a kain that's shechting the carbon and doing it for Klal Yisrael. What the pasuk here, and it says kol kaladas Yisrael. From here we learn sheshluchai shel adam kemaisei. When the kain does it for you, it's as if you did it yourself. So we see here there's a source for shlichus by a carbon Pesach.
Does everybody have to be there?
No. We said before that he sends someone else. You don't even have to be there. He does it for you, and even if he's not there. Fragt the Gemara, v'nichtev rachmane. So if so now we have another source for shlichus by a carbon. V'nichtev rachmane bekotchim. Let the Torah say this concept of shlichus here regarding the carbon, regarding kotchim. V'neisi hanach v'nigru minei. And we can learn out the others from kotchim. Why do we have to have a separate pasuk by truma, by Kidushin? Answers the Gemara, Mishum Dekelim Ifrach, because if you're going to say that Kotchim is the source for Shlichus, I'll tell you as follows. Ma'ale Kotchim, Sheken Roiv Masayin Al Yidei Shliach. Most of the Avodah that's done in the Beis HaMikdash through the Kayin is a Shliach that's doing it for the Yidden. We had before in the Masechta, the Gemara said that the Kayin is the Shliach of the Yidden to do the Avodah. So you have a few of the Kayin. You have the Shchita, for example, you can shecht yourself. The Kayin doesn't have to do it for you. But most of the Avodah, the Kayin is doing it for the Yid. So here, the reason why there's a concept of Shlichus, because that's B'chlal, how Karbanis work. You can't have all Yidden do it themselves. It all happens, or mostly happens, through a Shliach. But you can't compare it to Kidushin, Kidushin, Trumah, where over there maybe it's required for a person to do it himself. Okay, so the Gemara here explained that you can't learn from Kidushin itself, because Kidushin is Bal Korchach. You can't learn from Trumah itself, because Trumah you find can be done b'machshava. You can't learn from Kotchim itself, because Kotchim is Roiv Maseim Al Yidei Shliach. So now the Gemara says, Chada Mechada Lo Yasya. So to learn from one of these sources to compare to another one, you can't learn out, because each one has a certain stringency or a certain something stronger that works there. That's a reason that I would say that Shlichus works, so I can't compare. Maybe I could learn out one from two together, and this is the concept that we had already a few times here in this Masechta and Bechlal, the concept called Atzad Hashava. When you learn out from two together, so even when one has a unique characteristic, but the other one has a different characteristic, they're not exactly the same, so then I could compare and learn out from two together. Says the Gemara, Hai Taisi, from which two should we learn out? We have three sources for Shlichus, so which one do you want to learn out from two? Says the Gemara, Le'nichtav Rachmana B'Kotchim. If the Torah would have not written the source for Shlichus by Kotchim, V'teisi mehanach, and I could learn out from Kidushin and from Trumah together. So Kidushin has a concept of Bal Korchach, Trumah has the concept of Machshava, but they're not the same. So if they're not the same thing, so the fact that it's Bal Korchach or the fact that it's Machshava, that's not the cause for the din of Shlichus. Here I see the Torah says it works through a Shliach, and I could compare it to Kotchim. Says the Gemara, but I can't learn out Kotchim from these two, as we said already before. They're chayil, they're more mundane comparing to Kotchim. So maybe Kotchim is more stringent. You can't learn from there the concept of Shlichus. How about if the Torah would not write the din of Shlichus by Kidushin? And I would learn out from Kotchim and from Trumah. So I can't learn from there either. Because these two have something unique that they're both similar in. Both Trumah and Kotchim work through Machshava. So here Rashi says, just like we said before regarding Trumah, that just through your thought that you want to designate a certain portion of your property becomes Trumah, the same is with Kotchim. If a person thinks to himself that he wants this animal to be a oilot, to be a carbon, even without saying it by mouth, Rashi brings the pasuk kol nediv leiv, just in your heart, it becomes a carbon oilot automatically. So you have this concept of Machshava. So this is a unique kayach of being makdish something or making something truma that you don't have by Kidushin or by Kidushin, so you can't learn out from there. This concept here that the Gemara says, Sheken Yeshem b'machshava, there's a discussion about this in the Rishonim, and there's actually an interesting exchange of letters between the Rebbe and the Rebbe's father regarding to what extent this machshava works by Kotchim and by Truma. The Rebbe's father wrote in a letter to the Rebbe that this idea of machshava does not actually make the behemoth itself Kotchim. The machshava you have, that it should be a oila, will obligate the person to fulfill that machshava to bring the carbon oila. But in the cheftza, the animal itself does not become kotchim just through machshava. But the Rebbe said that no, you look in the simple pshat of Rashi here, and some Rishonim say it very clearly that the machshava of the person itself has the actual koyach to make the animal itself kotchim. Not just an obligation upon you, but the animal becomes a kotchim through the machshava itself. The Rishonim speak about it, but it's an interesting exchange. The Rebbe's father brings rayas to this. Okay, continuing inside the Gemara. Ella, says the Gemara, I'll give you a third option here. If the Torah would not write a source for shlichus regarding Trumah, and I would learn out the concept of shlichus from Kotchim and from Kidushin. So each one has a different chumrah. They're not the same thing. As the Gemara already said, that by Kachim, most of it is done through a shliach. By Kidushin, it could be done bal karchach. So they're not the same chumrah. So I can learn out from there the concept of shlichus to trumah, and it doesn't have to write by trumah. So on this, the Gemara doesn't have an answer. The Gemara says, Hachanami, you're right. The Torah did not have to write the concept of shlichus regarding trumah. So for Ella, if so, we brought before a pasuk the extra word of gam atem, gam atem lomali. What do we learn from that extra pasuk if we already could learn the din of shlichus from Kidushin and Kachim? And says the Gemara, Rabbi Yanai, we learn another detail about shlichus here, what Rabbi Yanai taught. Rabbi Yanai said, gam atem. When the Torah says this term of gam atem regarding truma, what I learn here is, ma atem b'nei bris. Just like when it says atem, it refers to you Yidden, the Yidden, b'nei bris, the ones that are in the covenant with Hashem. Af shluchachem b'nei bris. So too, you send a shliach, the whole chiddush of shlichus only applies to a Yid, not b'negei to a guy. There's no shlichus for a guy. Frag the Gemara, what do I need a special pasuk to teach me that there's no shlichus for a guy? We know this from a halacha that Rab Chia bar Abba taught in the name of Rab Yechanan. Rab Chia bar Abba Rab Yechanan, Eino eved nasa shliach lekabel get miyad bailo shel isha. An eved, Kanani that is, so he's a guy to some extent, he cannot receive a get from a husband for the wife. Why not? Not because he's a guy, nothing to do with that. But lefi she'eina b'toiras gittin v'kiddushin, because the concept of marriage, the way it exists by Yidden, does not exist in the world of an Evet. So you cannot be a shliach for something that you're not in that Torah, that you're not in that halacha, that's not shaykh to you. You can only be a shliach for something that you're in that Torah. So to exclude a guy of shlichus for truma or for something that only relates to a Yid, you don't need a special pasuk for that. He's not in that Torah, so the concept of shlichus doesn't apply. So the Gemara answers, no, by Truma, it's actually not necessarily so. By Truma, a guy could give Truma. It's derech, I still need a special pasuk to teach that you don't have shlichus for a guy regarding Truma because he isn't the Torah of Truma. So I would think to say, Eved the lav barat Torah hu klal. When it comes to this Eved Kanani, so the Kidushin does not apply to him at all. The concept of marriage doesn't exist by the Evet, so to be mate this Isha through the divorce doesn't exist by him as well. So he's not in that world of Kidushin, so obviously he can't be a shliach either. You don't need a pasuk for that. Avol oivid kechavim, when it comes to a guy regarding trume, hoyel ve'isei betrume denafshei. A guy could give trume from his own produce that he owns and it grows in his property in Eretz Yisrael. The Tanan, as it says in the Mishnah, oivid kechavim va'akuti. Shetarmu oivid kechavim and akuti, similar to a guy. Also depends. The kutim are certain gadim that, according to one opinion, were not proper gadim. Shetarmu, so they took trume, trumas and trume. That truma is truma. So Rashi over here explains that the Tana of this Mishnah holds that when a guy acquires property in Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't take away from the obligation of truma. We had this once as a machlokes, according to one opinion, the very fact that a guy buys a property in Eretz Yisrael, so it's not obligated in truma anymore. But the Tana of this Mishnah holds it is obligated in truma. And then later the guy takes his produce and there's the miruach, which is making the pile, finishing off, and when it becomes chayiv in truma, even if the guy does it, he's chayiv in truma. So Rashi brings the source for this, that this Tana holds that even a guy could give truma. So therefore, eime shliach nami yavid. If a guy could give truma from his property, so if a yid would send a guy to give truma, you would think that he can be a shliach with this as well. He's in the Torah of truma. Kamash malon. That's why it says atem gam atem, that there's no shlichus for a guy ever. But this only works according to what it said in this Mishnah we just quoted. But Rab Shimon, the Pata, Rab Shimon says that there is no truma by a guy. The Tnan, as we went in the Mishnah, truma sevet kechavim midamas, the truma of a guy is truma, and therefore if it falls into chulin, and there's a mixture here now, so it will aser it because there's a mixture. And also v'chayavin alei chaimish, if you eat b'sheigig from the truma of a guy, so by when you eat b'sheigig from truma, you have to pay back, and also an additional fifth, and that applies by the truma of a guy as well. But v'Rab Shimon paiter, Rab Shimon says no, there's no truma by a guy. So according to Rab Shimon, if there's no truma by a guy, atam gamatam lomali. So what do you need this extra limud to say that the shlichus by truma, or this extra word gam, if it's obvious that a guy can't be a shliach for truma either? Answers the Gemara, according to Rab Shimon, it's terech. I need a special pasuk here to say that it's shlichus by Truma, because all kedai tachamina. I would think to say, Hoyel v'omamar, since the Master has taught as follows, that when it says in the Torah, Kein Tarimu, so it says Atem. What does Atem mean? V'lo yarisen. That if you have a worker, a sharecropper in the field, and he shares with you and he gets a certain percent of the produce, but he cannot take truma for you without you telling him, without making him a shliach, even though he's sharing in this field. And also atem v'lo shutvim, you have a partner, even though you're sharing, you have a partnership here, but nevertheless he can't take the truma for you without you appointing him. Atem v'lo apotropis, you have an apotropis, a caretaker for Yisayimim, and he's taking care of everything. Nevertheless, he can't take the truma himself without the Yisayimim appointing him to do so. So that's all learned because it says atem here. And atem v'lo atayrim eshein shaloi. Atem, you can't take truma from something that's not yours without the permission of the owner. So this lois shein shaloi is the point of all these things over here. So now, because the Torah specified atem, eime atem v'lo shluchachem nami. So I would think that maybe this word atem says that the Torah is excluding truma from the din of shlichus, just like we find, I mentioned before, certain mitzvahs you must do yourself. So here, the very fact that the Torah writes atem, I would think that this word is coming to exclude all these individuals that are sharing with you, and nevertheless they can't take truma for you. So maybe I would think it excludes a shliach as well. So therefore, kamash malan, the Torah added in the word gam to say that there is a din of shlichus regarding truma. So this is the source of shlichus. We have the source of shlichus by Kidushin, by Kachim, by Truma. I want to assume we'll continue. There's other sources you will see according to other opinions in the concept of shlichus.